How is everyone? Good. Significant day? To me, today is significant not necessarily for the date, but more because we're here. Here meaning that we are all paying such close attention to a particular day. And this day is bringing about an immense amount of idea as to what it means. Imagine if we spent this much emphasis and effort on every day, what would happen? So it's interesting for me as I reflect throughout this day, what is it that is coming up, not only within myself, but everyone else around me? So what is it that is making this particular time so significant for you? And it actually is an incredible moment on the global calendar. I mean, it's the end of the Mayan cycle that has lasted 5,125 years. So within that, that's a mark for sure. And we have to honor it. We're actually here experiencing the end of a cycle that has lasted 5,125 years. But to return back to this sensation that keeps coming up within you. And I've talked to some people that they've said that for the past 13 years they've had this day on their calendar as being important. So for 13 years they've been looking at this particular time as significant for. Now this component of what for is what I'd like to explore tonight. What is it for? If anything, this day marks a moment of transformation. Transforming within oneself. Moving from thoughts and ideas that we held as being true, and then through a community of collective consciousness, opening a door into an opportunity to shed that which we feel that we need to let go of and step into a new level, a new paradigm of experience. And you for yourself have the opportunity to define what that is, what that means. So what is it within you that rings such importance? As you strip away the layers of mundane activity, what rests at the center is holding you upright and walking the steps that you need to take every day. To me, that's incredibly significant. So potentially, in our life, we'll never actually see another moment where there's so many people looking at one moment in time as being significant for transformation and change. In a sense, it's liberation. Some are thinking of a liberation that is enhancing one's life. Others are thinking of a liberation that's going to abolish one's life. But in a sense, both are good. Because movement is movement in any direction. What's important is the fact that we're constantly moving towards this single point. In a sense, a goal that you feel inside yourself as being significant. What that is at this time doesn't even matter. What matters is the fact that you have something to revolve your experience around. So in a sense, it is the center of your universe. And each of us have our own universe-like experience within ourselves, and then we come together as a collective. So what becomes important is the fact that there's a goal in mind. And the energy of that then comes together in order to create the strength. The particular goal doesn't really matter. So what is it that marks this day as being so incredibly significant to you? And what are you going to do to support it? What is your practice to ground yourself into the moments that you take after this threshold? Because actually that's where all of the weight, that's where the transformation exists. It's within your level of responsibility to uphold this transformation as it's occurring. We ideally do not want this moment to pass us by as just a beautiful thought and a dream. We want this moment to be the catalyst for transformation. And the more you can understand the fact that it takes your action and your responsibility, then the more real it becomes. This is the same story, replaying itself again and again and again. So what is it inside of you that is so incredibly important that you would be willing to align yourself with, that you would be willing to change your daily routine for, that you would be willing to disregard some thoughts that are not supporting it, that you would be willing to change your vocabulary or your relationship with others for. What is that? Because the clearer we become as to what that is, then the more possible it is going to be to make that transitionary shift that needs to happen in order to support it. Again, it sounds like such a wonderful idea. And if someone were to ask me, how do I shift out of this mental process that I have going for myself into something that is higher, into something that is clearer? My answer is always, you must develop a relationship with yourself and take responsibility for that transformation. Like, yeah, well, how about another idea? Yeah, that's pretty good, but do you have another idea? And there's no other idea. It's just the one. And it's thousands of years old. And the mind attempts to wiggle its way out of taking responsibility every single time. So the heart of your transformation exists within you. The time spent within your moments of your day, you are responsible for. So like always, this is much more than just a talk. It is a meditation. It's an attempt to connect with an idea that's inside of you as to how to develop yourself within a relationship with yourself. So it's an energetic alignment between the body, the breath, and the mind to make a stable environment for this transformation to occur. And it is so incredibly simple. You can feel it. And ideally, we do not want to complicate it, because it isn't. So if we were to leave the comfort of this room and you were left to your own device, what would come next? This is what we want to develop, is what comes next. When you become challenged on your steadiness, what's the first thing to come out of your mouth? What's the first thought to pop up? I generally disregard the first, the second, the third, and the fourth thing that comes up. I wait, and I wait, and I wait to see actually what is it really that is trying to be said. And within that practice, I become grounded into that answer, which then over time becomes the answer. Not the second, the third, or the fourth, but the answer. Transformation. This is what is occurring. Liberating yourself, freeing yourself from a level of relationship and understanding into a stronger, higher, more dynamic form of that relationship. What is it that is so incredibly important to you? Why do you keep getting up in the morning? I'm asking you to align yourself with that. Simply align yourself with it. Not constantly remember what it is or journal about it, but align yourself with that. And as many reminders as you need over the day, use them. Because with the alignment, everything that is no longer needed or necessary simply falls away. It has to be that, or 10,000 years of research has been wrong. All of these great books and mystics aren't telling us the truth. I take great comfort in that, because it's the individual having the experience for themselves and seeing if it's true. The great thing is that there's actually nothing to lose. What else are you supposed to do inside there? What are you doing inside there that is so incredibly important? What are you doing that is moving you forward towards this ideal that keeps flashing before your eyes? Meanwhile, everyone's saying, oh, you should just be in the moment, be in the moment, be in the moment. But what is this moment that you're being in? There's only one individual that can answer that question. And what is miraculous is that as the individual understands the question, the answer aligns itself with all of these masters, with thousands of years of research, every single time, without an exception. So it's a human experience then that we're looking at. A human effort to understand who they are. a human need or desire to transform oneself, to liberate oneself from the confines of what they've been taught, into something that is independent, free-thinking, open, wise, and able to decipher and understand the signs as they come towards them. This is a human endeavor. And because it rests within the human at the core of its being, there is no getting away from it. There is no running away, walking away, sneaking away. It doesn't exist. There is only, yes, I take the responsibility, or no, I do not. And if you say, no, I do not, you still are not able to get away from it. You just simply pretend that you do not know what's going on. You pretend that you do not know what's going on. All the while you know very well that you are ignoring the signs, that you are purposefully mixing up, not deciphering them, but purposefully putting them out of order to save something inside of you that somebody told you in the past, or what you think is true. Doesn't really matter to anybody else around you what you do. It only matters to you. We're individuals having an experience. But as this individual, we are developing a relationship deep, deep, deep inside. And as this relationship grows, we see that we're actually connected to a greater form of consciousness. So in a sense, you can say we're simply the self experiencing the self having an experience. So if there's any truth to that, the self experiencing the self having an experience, if we are in fact a collective that is just sprouted into individuals, then the individuals have to take responsibility for their little piece so that they can take that piece back into the collective, polished, clear, understood, clean. And if there's no truth to that, if we are actually not the self experiencing the self having an experience, but we're just simply individuals here for a particular length of time, and that is it, then wouldn't it be worth it to develop an experience for yourself that is ideal? Because if anything is shifting, it's our perception and how we see the world around us. This is what is actually shifting. So the world around us equates into two: the inner and the outer. And how we see it means everything. So you can never actually say, I don't know, because you do know. You can say that I don't care to act on what I know. You can say that. And nobody should blame you for it. Nobody should even give it a second thought. It should be, perfect. But you can't ever say, I don't know, because I've yet to see it actually be true on this topic that we're speaking about. You know. Maybe you only know as far as you can see, but that's known. Beyond that hasn't been seen yet. So it's this perception that is shifting. The perception then influences the attitude. The attitude then influences the mind, thought, emotion, personality. Ideally, the images that come up in our mind are supportive to what we wish to see and feel in the world around us. The reality is that our world is slightly harsh. This is not a reality. To try to sugarcoat that reality would be to try to dilute, or the individual would be deluded or delusional. The reality is that our experience in this world is harsh. Many things happen in a given moment that you would rather not know about. But what fuels that experience? What is it? Who is the individual or individuals that are responsible for all of those horrific acts happening right now? And if there is any truth to this concept of the self experiencing the self having an experience, then you have a direct connection into that act on both ends. On the side that we help fuel it by our own thoughts, by our own actions. But we're also a part of the solution by our own thoughts and our own actions. If the self is experiencing the self having an experience. So if it's the collective that you wish to change, then the individual is what you need to inquire into and develop. But if in fact we are not the self experiencing the self having an experience, we are truly individuals living on this planet for a limited amount of time. The only thing that we can do is take responsibility for ourselves. And because you and I are communicating, we share ideas. Because we share ideas, we're developing context between the two of us into how we're going to share this space, how we're going to live close together, how we're going to develop the next day, week, month, year. So if I take responsibility for myself and you and I meet, and if I have a positive and you have a negative attitude towards a certain circumstance, but we keep working together, working and developing this experience of a moment that we're sharing, over time, if there's any truth to anything that I'm saying, or they've been saying for thousands of years, then the one that is for the benefit of humanity, the one that is for the best interest of the total, will eventually win. The influence will become positive. So my positive experience will be shared and then eventually become a positive experience that you develop within yourself, which will then become. So what is it that is marking this transformation? This global awakening that they keep talking about when our world is so intense, when there's bad things happening all of the time. Where is the unity in that? If we start to remove ourselves out of this immediate and bring us into a lineage of lifetimes, not your personal lifetime, but generations and generations and generations and generations, then your positive influence has a huge effect. How did we get to where we are at this moment? How many of you ever are in the middle of an act, and then in your mind you're flipping back to what your parents used to say or do, what your grandparents used to say or do, what they used to do in the old country, or what your grandparents used to say they did in the old country. So you cannot actually disregard the power of experience. So this moment is actually the most significant moment that you will ever live. It's happening right now. And that's why this day is so incredibly interesting to me. Not because of the date, but because you are all here. Because I'm here. And inside of me, I feel that this is well worth it and important. I feel that it is so important that I do things specifically to support it. That to me is fascinating. A friend once said to me that you can be sure that people are doing exactly what they want to do. And I thought about it for a moment. And then I laughed because it's true. So what is it then that is so important to you? And does your thought and your emotion, your personality, support that which you feel is so important? We actually have limited amount of choices when it comes to transformation. And when I say choices, I mean choices that you have been born with. There's a limited selection of things to do. The most powerful of these choices is the fact that you are conscious and aware. So the fact that you are conscious is probably the most powerful tool that you have. And if I could give a suggestion, I would suggest that you develop the most awake part of that consciousness. The most awake part of the consciousness. Can you show me that? What is your most awake part of that consciousness? And can you see with your eyes through that part? And what happens in that moment? Does everything become a little bit more quiet? Does everything become a little bit more alert, concentrated, focused, grounded, settled, maybe clear. But this most awake part of the consciousness that you have access to at the moment then sends direct influence over everything else that you have access to, that you've been born with. Your mind, your breath, the tissue of the body, the nervous system will respond to that awareness. And you could argue that it's exhausting to do that. And I would argue, what else do you have to do? Nothing. When you narrow it down to responsibility, and if you can narrow it down to just yourself, what do you really have to do to survive? You need to eat, sleep, drink some water, have some shelter. Basics are covered. Now you're left with everything that happens inside. Your thoughts, your emotions, your personality. Your job, really, when you look at it, is just to enjoy yourself, is it not? So what else do you have to do? Meaning for yourself, this individual. Everything else has been suggested to you that you do. And you've taken it on, and you've taken it on, and you've taken it on, and you've taken it on. Taken it on to the point of not even knowing where this individual exists anymore. Well, it's okay, because this is my devotion. I have responsibility for these people, for these things, for this life that I've built for myself outside of here. Each piece takes energy, takes time. But what we sometimes do not realize is that none of it exists and none of it runs without you. So the most important part of your devotion, your life, is the individual that you feel inside there. For some of you, buried deep. That is actually the most absolute crucial component to the success of your time. And to bring it forward into the present moment is your only task. There's multiple layers. So this concentrated awareness, this highest form of you being awake, is actually applied at any one of these external tasks that you've accepted to take on. Present, alert, aware. And the only thing that we're developing is our perception of what that is. I'm so busy. What else are you supposed to be doing right now? I'm so tired. Why don't you then sleep? There's not enough hours in the day. These are the only hours that exist in the day. Funny. at this moment, there is an incredible amount of people taking the time to reflect on what is. What is this experience physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually? It's happening. So the collective consciousness is pushing for transformation in a positive direction. Liberation in both ways. Some are saying doomsday. Good. Everything we don't need anymore, break it. Others are saying liberation, transformation into a higher form of consciousness. Perfect. Let's use that. Let's do that. You cannot say, I don't know how, because it's not true. You do know how. You're doing it right now. The moment you take responsibility and say, yes, I am responsible for this moment, is the moment that you are transitioning, transforming yourself into a higher form of consciousness, which has the ability to see the rest clearly. And then at that moment, your conviction within your responsibility has to be incredibly high, because you're fragile, like a newborn baby. So those decisions that you make at that moment determine whether or not you're going to go back to sleep or stay awake. It happens all the time. But what's unique about this moment that we're having right now is that there's a collective that are all focusing on it with strong intention, which gives ripeness for fast movement forward. Do you notice the softness that exists inside of you? The part that has just given up. Do you notice that? It just cannot go on. Can't do this any longer. That softness ideally becomes your close friend, because that's probably the strongest part that you have. Not the part that says I can push through, I can do it, I can develop myself, I am going to transform these thoughts that are not supportive into thoughts that are supportive. That's actually not the strength, that's the fear. That's the one that needs to show that it knows. But the part that says, I surrender, that's the strength. Because it's willing to say, you know what? I know, but I just don't know. Which sounds like I'm contradicting myself. But this knowing, this knowledge that we're speaking of, that has been written about, practiced, developed for thousands of years, is not an intellectual idea of understanding. It's the subtle pulse that fuels the manifestation of everything that is real. In that for anyone who has ever done anything in their life that they are, in a sense, proud of, they all know that there was this element of surrendering to a higher form of who we are in order to make it happen. Saying that I can get myself to a certain point with my intellect, and that's it. And I can maintain my position there, but the rest I have to surrender to a deeper level of activity, to a higher form of understanding, than to make it all happen. And this softness is not confused. This softness doesn't ever say that I don't know. This softness is one that always picks up the pieces at the end. Continues on. It's the continuation of the continuation of the continuation. So it doesn't matter if you are liberating yourself from up here or down here. It continues on. It is always within that expression of manifestation, creativity, wisdom. It's this concept of effort and then ease. Patanjali talks about the effort and the ease. So the mind is constantly striking a balance between the effort and the ease. In the West, we have to develop the ease within the effort. So I know you know. You're doing it right now. You're following this conversation. The fact that you're following the conversation means that we have a level of understanding that is shared. If you did not have a level of understanding, the conversation would not be able to exist. No matter how hard you deny it, it is still there. Notice where you're going. Notice that awake state of your conscious mind. Notice the presence that it has in the midst of the kaleidoscope of thinking that is occurring, into the onslaught of emotion, memory, feeling. The constant is the fact that you are awake through it all, even when you're sleeping, and that's the sign right there. Wake up. Even when you're sleeping, you are still conscious. This is the constant. So if you want to understand the meaning of life, it exists within the constant, conscious moment. What is that even, the meaning of life? Your individual life, and what does it mean? I know you think about it. I know you are a little bit thirsty sometimes for it. The meaning. It gets dry. It's dry in this climate. Not to get too metaphorical, but to quench your thirst is to actually drink from this well that exists within the constant. It's the exact same well that we've been drinking out of as human beings for thousands of years. It doesn't ever change. Same well. Across the entire globe, collective consciousness. So you are as significant in terms of your understanding of the mind as the Tibetan sitting in Tibet, as the Sufi sitting in the Middle East. There's no difference. So when we come together in a moment to develop our understanding of what awareness is, you are a key piece of the puzzle. Your ability to see, your ability to take the responsibility to carry it forward into the next moment. So what is so incredibly important to you? What do you wish to do? Where do you wish to go inside that landscape that you have, this inner reality? And then how will you then manifest it in order to exist outside here? What practice do you have in place in order to facilitate it? Where do you find your comfort? And what is so uncomfortable? What is so uncomfortable that you keep running away? What is so uncomfortable that you keep distracting yourself with shiny things? Is it possible for you just to stay in one spot? Stay. And let it all come to you. Come through you. See everything that there is to see. If you can define what makes you comfortable, you can get to the essence of that comfort. And then at the essence of the comfort, transcend out of the pattern of returning back to what makes you feel comfortable. And use the essence of the comfort into discomfort. Because what is keeping you from your goal, from this that is so incredibly important to you, is the fact that you do not want to go into discomfort. You'd rather not see it. One of the biggest things that I hear is that I can't meditate. And I hear it a lot. And the reality is that when you close your eyes and you soften yourself into relaxation, what you see in front of you is exactly the content of your mind, which is you actively pursuing and developing the relationship with the mind. What initially comes to the surface within your mind is everything that you're attempting to push out of the way so that you can concentrate on your task. So I need everything within me to be involved within our relationship that we have right now, this talk. So that then when it comes time for me to close my eyes, what comes up is everything that I was pushing aside. So then once that clears out, then there's going to be another layer, and then another layer, and then another layer. So if in fact you have been pushing without allowing it to release, then there's going to be all kinds of stuff that comes up. Things that are funny, things that are not so funny, things that are painful, things that make you feel elated. But we want to get to the most original experience of this mind. In order to get to the most original experience of the mind, where the mind can truly rest within stillness, we have to potentially go through something that may not be so comfortable. In your ability to soften, to surrender, and to give up is your closest friend. So you might die. It's okay. You died attempting to develop a relationship with yourself. What else are you supposed to do? If we are the self experiencing the self having an experience, then you will just go back into the source and maybe become reincarnated. If there is no next, then you know without a shadow of a doubt there's no more question. Both are liberating. Which eliminates an immense amount of fear. Because the fear that you have is actually what is holding you in your predicament. You can deny it all you want. I could listen to you for days, months, and years. But it will not change the fact that you are holding yourself because you are afraid. You're afraid of losing something. You're afraid of what they might say. You're afraid of what generations and generations have been doing within your family. Eliminate the fear through self-inquiry, then you are free to do what needs to be done in order to fully fulfill what you feel is so incredibly important within you. So important.